Some of us have been fortunate enough to be employed during the pandemic, others not so much. As things start ramping back up, industries have found themselves having to hit the ground running with minimal personnel. This is 0 to 100, getting back into the norm. All right. We didn't really have a prep for this. I guess we can shoot. I guess I can shoot an intro here in a little bit. We can just cut this out, I guess. So,
or let it in there for comedic relief,
right?
So our listeners know that we're actually human, down to earth people. DTE who are DTF.
You guys play too much. Like, see, I knew these guys were just a bunch of hooligans.
Speaking of playing too much, who we got back this week?
Hi, there he is.
Shoreline.
We can't see you.
Yay!
can't
Sorry
see you
about
in
the
the car
delayed
audio.
response. He's still getting back into this side of the swing of things.
I am back. It has been, God, what, like 8 weeks or almost 8 weeks now that I haven't been on the podcast.
A
I've
lifetime.
lost track. That's how long it's been.
A lifetime in our eyes.
It's been a
Too
barren
long.
wasteland.
Yeah,
Too
I'd say
long.
it's probably been about 2 months since I've been on the podcast, and I've definitely missed it. But I have been happy to be back at work. So yeah, that's been great. Goes along with today's episode title, which is 0 to 100. Cause I went from being at home all the time pretty much to never being home. So, it's been a fun couple of months for sure. Got to do some really cool shows. And
Yeah, the locations and the pictures you were sending, like some of the outdoor settings, man, beautiful.
yeah, it's festival season and there are some great ones that are happening. And I'm part of this, big concert series that I have been working on, and it's going really well. And, yeah, it's keeping me really busy. For one company, and then I'm also now working for 3 other companies and a venue, so I don't have much free time. So editing the podcast I can do, but trying to be a guest as well can be kind of difficult. So especially because I haven't had a weekend off in forever.
A guest in his own podcast, he says.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about that,
Okay.
brother man. Like, this time last year, most of us, got air quote displaced when COVID was rampant, and we either had to work from home or got laid off or had no means of doing work. Well, what was that like in your case, man? Like, just like having a set schedule or at least a set time frame of when you're going to be most busy, to just kind of watching paint fall off your ceiling.
Well, it was
Well, and how were you notified? Was it you were right in the middle of a concert and like, hey, pack it up and go home?
No, so it was kind of worse than that. So everything hit in March, right? So that's after the winter, and here where I live, the winter is usually kind of a slow time. Like, you might have some corporate events, you might have some holiday party type stuff, but for the most part, it's like that's your slow season. So you're already not working during that time. So luckily, I had worked an absolute shit ton of overtime that year, and I was fine financially, got me through the winter, and then still had quite a bit in savings, so I was okay. And then March hit, and everything was looking kind of weird. I remember being in San Francisco, actually, and like watching the news and being like, oh, what's this COVID thing? Oh, it's bullshit, whatever. And then I ended up being down there when the that cruise ship got kind of, trapped offshore, and then we were like,
That's right. Everybody was stuck on board. Yeah. I
this
forgot
might
about
be
that.
this might be a real thing. Oh shit. And like, we're taking, the BART everywhere and public transit, and I mean, masks weren't even a thing. And then I was like, oh, well, okay. So I come home, and this would have been just before everything shut down. So this had been like March 8th or 9th. and I was going to a meeting for the biggest show we do every year, which is a big corporate fundraiser for a hospital up here, and it's a big old, black suit event and all that stuff. And we show up to the meeting, and this is Wednesday. The show's happening on Friday, Saturday, and everybody shows up. The person running the event is like, "Oh, don't worry, we're like 90% sure it's going to happen." We're like, "Cool, whatever." So we continue business as usual, and then we're halfway through the meeting, and she's got her laptop open. She's like, "Well, we're like 70% sure it's going to happen." And then it was, "Well, we're like 75% sure it's not going to happen." And then that number just kept going down. And then at the end of the meeting, she goes, "You guys will be getting an email on the way home. The show's not happening." And this is a show that the company that I work for has done for like the last 20 years or so. So, and it's like the big one, right? Like it's the one that kicks us off, and then we go into our busy season, and busy season never came last year. So it was really tough going from, okay, we've had most of this time off, time to get back to work, which is a seasonal thing. And I feel really, I feel for a lot of my colleagues that either aren't as financially responsible or weren't as busy as I was, or, were in different situations than I was, and they weren't able to handle that as well. So it was a really tough year for anybody in the entertainment industry. I remember I went to a tool show down in Portland. It was the last show in Portland, and I went to the concessions at the beginning of the show. Everybody's happy. It's, just business as usual. And then intermission happens, and I go and get another beer, and the concessions people are all like crying. And I was like, "What's going on?" And they said, "Well, we just found out that, the NBA season just got canceled, and we don't have a job after tonight." Like everybody in the stadium.
Wow.
Like that's how they were all informed. And then that's when everything shut down. I had 37 shows canceled in one day. Like the rest of my year got canceled in one day.
Jesus.
So what's the first thing that ran through your head once you got that notification that the rest of your year was shot?
Well, it's tough, right? Because at first everybody was like, "Oh, it's going to be, a couple months max."
Well, wasn't it initially? It was 2 weeks, something or other.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks, and then
they say something the curve in 2 weeks or whatever. I don't remember what it was, but
yeah, it was kind of trying to flatten the curve in 2 weeks, and then really trying to be able to do what we do in about 2 months. So the company that I was working for and still kind of work for, they put me on standby, which is a program up here where if your employer says you have a potential start date that's 12 weeks out or whatever, you can collect unemployment and all that, and it's fine. So I was on standby for the first few months, thinking that like it wasn't going to last that long, and then everything happened that we are all, I'm sure, so well versed in, and it was really depressing for a very long time. I mean, I love what I do. It has been a great career that has financially prepared me for, some great things. And it's just a really cool career. And to not have that was, it was pretty depressing, man. It was a rough time.
Yeah, I can imagine. So going from, and for me, like I can imagine. So initially where Six and I were working at the time, when all this kind of came down, there was a bunch of rumors going around. Are they going to shut down? Are they going to continue working? Is it going to be working just a couple of days a week, every other day type thing until the curves flatten, whatever the case is? and we were fortunate at the same time that we stayed open and working day in and day out, you know.
Mhm.
But my first thought was shutting down was, okay, if we're shutting down, like, or if we're working every other day, am I getting paid for those days? Am I getting paid for only the days that I'm working? How does my health benefits stay intact, right? Because throughout this whole thing, you're like, okay, well, if we're shutting down because of a virus, what about my medical benefits? I'm going to need those, right? But there's
Mhm.
also a policy if you have to work over 120 days through the year to retain those benefits for the year. Well, it hadn't been 120 days in the year yet when this all hit. So just all those kind of questions. I'm like, okay, if I'm not getting paid, how am I going to make? Are the bills going to stop? No. So how am I going to make what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? You know,
Totally.
just all those kind of thoughts were the ones that hit me first.
Yeah. Yeah. I was financially at the very beginning I wasn't as worried about it because like I said, I had a pretty good buffer in savings, but then you start realizing that you don't have that income coming in, and then you're like, oh no, this is getting bad.
Right.
Well, yeah, and you start seeing, you're like, okay, initially it probably feels like a vacation, right? Like, oh, whew, I'm getting a couple weeks here that I typically don't get, and you're hanging out, catching up on TV shows, eating some good food, playing video games, you know, just kind of doing you. And then you're like, all right, it's only 2 weeks to flatten the curve. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. It's just going to be a 2 week vacation. We're all back at it. And then fast forward 3 months later, and you're going, my savings is starting to show. You know what I mean?
Oh, I definitely know what you mean,
starting to see
man.
less dollar signs in there.
Yeah, no, it's
SOS.
it's a tough one. And for me, like you said, like the first couple weeks, maybe a month, it was kind of cool. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. It was nice to have an actual, time of not having to think about work because you're not really able to think about work. But then it became all I could think about was work, and then how I couldn't do it, and like how I couldn't do what I love to do. And it did allow me to do some things that were outside of my normal career. I got to start a recording project with a buddy of mine. I was able to mix a broadcast stream for another company. We were able to start the podcast. That's a big one. I would not have been able to start this podcast with my current schedule the way that we did. And now that it's kind of the ball's rolling on it, it's easier to manage in terms of like editing and all this stuff. But I would not have been able to figure that out in the middle of my busy season, like I would have been last year. So, yeah, it's not all bad, but it's certainly not all good.
Yeah, can totally agree on that.
Yeah, I guess we benefited from your lack of work on that end by putting you to work on this end.
That's true. That's true.
But so did you think, I'm sure you did, but at any point did you go, man, what if this is longer than we expect? And did you think about having to choose another career field, right? Like, okay, well, if I can't do the audio industry, what am I going to do next?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a point in time, not long ago, actually, that I was thinking about hopping off the audio path and becoming an electrician. Because
Like a commercial residential?
yeah, either
Okay.
way, better benefits, but benefits period, really. There's a union involved. And from what I understand, the electricians union's pretty rad. I know people in the industry. It would be a pretty natural progression, I feel, because I already deal with a lot of big power, and so I'm already kind of thinking like that anyways. I would say I was probably at one point, I was like a couple of days from like pulling the trigger on that, of like let's go try to find an apprenticeship, or let's try to go to a training school or something like that. But my reasoning for not is I know that I would have enjoyed the money too much, and I don't know if I would have came back to doing the audio thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the audio thing, but I
with
would
stable pay, stable hours,
stable
Yeah.
benefits. I mean, that's a big one.
benefits. Yeah.
Because also another total sidetrack, I lost my medical benefits in the pandemic because I turned 26, so I was not on my parents' insurance anymore.
oh man.
Oh,
I had
man.
$2,000 worth of dental work that was supposed to be getting done because I have bad teeth. It's a long story. And like the week I was supposed to go in and get some shit done, everything shut down. And then by the time everything opened back up, they called me. They're like, "Hey, we're open now. We can reschedule your appointment." And I was like, "Well, you can't." So I'll figure it out later. So yeah, the benefits would have really kept me there.
Yeah, the benefits are everything. I think we've touched on this in other episodes, but pay is great and try to get as much of it as you can, but
Absolutely.
benefits are everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you had to pay for all medical, dental, eye, whatever out of pocket. We'd all be
yeah.
be pretty broke pretty quick,
Very.
especially those of us who have kids with jacked up eyes and teeth.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And another side of it, maybe why you wouldn't have come back is how and this is how I think about things. I'm like, okay, the stability side of it, and then what if this happens again?
For sure. That has definitely, especially recently with the new variant going around, has definitely been in my head. It is something that I definitely think about. I hope that it doesn't happen, obviously, but I have plans for other things. I mean, you can make good money doing like Postmates and Uber Eats and all that stuff. That's probably what I would fall back on in a temporary situation. And then if it became a longer term thing, then maybe I do follow that electrician path. But but yeah, it's go ahead.
Have you thought about maybe working an apprenticeship or getting your licensing in tandem with audio now? So if and when this does happen again, you're kind of already sort of established, and it'll just be easier to get to work right away.
For sure. I have thought about that. The issue is the number of hours you have to put in as an electrician to get through your apprenticeship and go on to your journeymans and all that stuff. I mean, it's not a small amount of hours. I mean, you're talking
Like-
a couple of years essentially.
Yeah, I know in Ohio it's I think 2-year apprenticeship minimum.
Yeah. So it's especially with how busy I am on the audio side of things. If it does come back in the middle of that, like by the time I try to come back to audio, if I were to do the apprenticeship thing, then I'm that much further behind, and I'm already off of everybody's call list at that point. Because
you're like,
worked
hey,
my-
I've started the apprenticeship. I can't stop in the middle of the apprenticeship. I got to finish it out, and then.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's been 2 years of you not doing audio. So, like most industries, you've been forgotten since then.
Well, and being a subcontractor for a lot of these companies, you're just off their call list. I mean, that's and it takes a lot of work to get onto their call list, and so it's something that I've worked very hard to do, and that's why I'm not jumping at the opportunity to try to go do those things, is because I have worked extremely hard to get to where I'm at and to be, I've got a lot to learn, but
you're essentially leading the show setup and teardown, right?
For some of them, yeah. For some of these other companies, I'm also, the ones that I'm just starting out for, they're still testing the waters to make sure I'm not, faking it, which I'm not. And they're realizing that. So they're starting to trust me more and more and more. But, if I were to, if everything were to stop tomorrow, And then I were to go get an apprenticeship, and then it's 2 years later, and I try to say, come back and be like, hey, by the way, I'm available again. They're going to say, Jeff, who? Or,
Right.
Yeah. Like
So-
we've already trained up somebody else since then, and they're running it for us.
Yeah, or I want to be the guy at the top of their call list. I don't want to be the guy at the bottom of the call list because they don't get called as often. And some of these companies that that I'm starting to work for do some really cool things, and I want to do it with them. I want to be one of the guys. So
Most definitely. On our end of things, or in other industries that were impacted, but they didn't shut down completely. I know of some people, they kind of they put them on a reserve list, say, or they put them on a flex schedule where we'll call you when we need work, and then they have like just this ready available set of people who come in and day out, or they alternate day in and day out. And whenever we actually do come into work, everything takes a whole lot longer just to get things rolling, just because person A is not around, or somebody is working from home, and we can't like bridge the gap fast enough for the task at hand to get accomplished at the time it needs to be. Some places, like what MVP and I worked in, they just consolidated responsibilities into a couple of people, and
But
the
never
headache-
explained those other jobs fully. So every day was figuring it out from scratch. You know what I mean?
from
Right.
scratch, right? And
And then you'd finally figure it out. Sorry to cut you off, Six. And then you'd finally figure it out, but you still had to get the person who was, air quotes, working from home. You still had to send them the paperwork to get their electronic signature to be able to, like, say, to issue out a part. And I'm like, well, if I need them so bad, they should be here. If I need them for every part that I have to get issued, they should be here, instead of me emailing them and hoping that they're sitting at their computer and not out doing whatever the hell they want to be doing when they're supposed to be sitting at the computer working. Yeah, it was such a pain.
yeah. And then like say like the commercial industries, right? Like say transportation, for instance, they all had to shut down or be at like 10% capacity to kind of limit the amount of people coming in, coming out. Like most airlines, I some of our listeners have shown pictures where they're just like dead. Right? Like they walk into the hangar space and everything's just like empty, like, which is like something they haven't seen in like ever. I think
Mhm.
only like the 20 plus more veterans have actually seen it being this dead before.
Wow.
And then of course, like they had to let go some of their mechanics or some of their technicians, or in your case, they couldn't afford to keep them there.
Mhm.
So they're trying to find work for those that have remained. And it's like, well, like you're here, you made it, or you're part of the people we can actually keep around, but there's not a whole lot of work for you to do. Like in MVP and I's case, we were there going in day and day out, doing 8 hours, 12 hours, however many hour shifts like we normally would. But all the work we actually did do was kind of like just to fill space. We're like,
Right.
why are we here again? I mean, I appreciate the fact that I am here and I'm getting paid for it, but
Right.
why are we here?
Yeah, I can understand that. So you guys probably remember this because I was bitching a lot about it to you. But at one point, the company that I work for was doing these outdoor casino things for these corporate casinos, and like we were doing HVAC. Like I'm not an HVAC person, like, but like we were having to do jobs that like weren't part of what we do, and so like it was working when you can and doing what you can, but yeah, for the most part it was feast or famine, and most times it was famine,
Right. And like, hey, we need someone to do this. Like, cool, don't know how to do that. It's like, well, here's the book, figure it out. Here we go.
Yeah.
I really don't know what I'm doing. And
Yeah,
and then
what's
but-
happening right now?
right, but they yell at you like you should have be savvy enough to figure it out. Like, I have no idea what the hell I'm looking at right now.
Exactly.
Why don't you understand how to do every job from
Yeah.
every person on the airfield?
Yeah.
And if you give me some time, I can figure it out. But you only give me 10 minutes. You know,
Exactly. Like I'm learning as I go. Like give me some time.
Right. Like,
So
let's figure this timeline out together, friend, while we're still at minimal capacity.
Yeah, and then like in the aviation side of things, right? They still kept everything to a really tight schedule, but with lesser manpower. It's like, no, we still have to meet all these deadlines. I'm like, we have a third of what we typically have. You know,
yeah.
I was like, and like Six alluded to, the shipping lanes have slowed down. You know, getting parts to and from, and equipment to and from, and okay, and we only have one piece of test equipment. It's got to be used at 2 different sites in 2 different states, and it just like, well, you guys are falling behind schedule, and it's your fault, you know. And it's like, it's not my fault. We're doing everything we can. You still kept the tight tolerances without full capacity personnel to be able to take care of, you know. And then some people got sick otherwise, even if they were supposed to be at work, they got sick otherwise. They moved on and found another job. They did, I don't know, you name it, but it was tough there for a long time, and still is. And then even in the current place where I work, they do this thing where it's called close contact. So if one guy calls out ill, okay, he's got to go and get tested right away. And if he pops positive, okay, who are y'all working close in contacts with? And I've come in one day, and then 30 minutes later, I go out into the hangar, and there's nobody. I'm like, Jesus, where the fuck's everybody at? This place isn't that big. They can't all hide from me. And I go and talk to, you know, other management or whatever else, and they, oh, well, so and so. They don't give you a name, but they say, oh, one of the persons from X department popped positive and took everybody out with them. I'm like, so who do we have here? We have 2 guys left. Jesus, how are we supposed to maintain the current ops pace if I had 2 guys when I had 30 this morning? You know, I don't know.
Totally.
Right.
No, I completely understand that. Because you're right. A lot of people left the industries. A lot of people are choosing to not come back to work, and that I'm not as big of a fan of. But I get it. It works for some people's like living situations or their childcare situations. Like that's insane. Everybody's got their own reasons. I'm not really one to judge on that, but there's a lot of people that have left the industry or moved out of the state or, you know, what have you. And so when for my industry, when shows start coming back, well, and right now they're coming back like crazy through the summer, and there's not enough techs to work.
Yep.
Which I'm
Yes.
right now I'm reaping some of the benefits of that. I mean, the company that I work for raised my rate $10 an hour, which is
Damn.
great.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fucking great.
That's good.
And then the other companies that I'm working for are paying similar rates, except for the other companies that I work for pay time and a half after 10 hours. And most of my days are more than 10 hours. So it's pretty great, that part of it. But I think it forced some industries to really realize like, okay, we have to pay these people more to get them to you know, want to be back here.
Right.
Which is good. I think that's a good step, but I don't think everybody's figured it out. I don't think anybody's figured it out.
No, like they figured out that, okay, we do have some workhorses and they are worth paying more, but there's also some that they realize that, man, we're not really missing a beat with them here or not. Like we realized that they weren't doing too much. And so a lot of companies have figured out, man, we had a lot of overhead that we didn't need. And so they found that, okay, we can have a lot of people work from home and cut that overhead out of it. So we don't need this 10,000 square foot workspace anymore. We need just 3,000 foot for the warehouse and then for 2 personnel to work it, right? All the other people who are doing computer work, whatever, they can do that stuff from the comfort of their own home.
Yeah.
Like you said, there are some people that were just kind of dead weight. And so I think companies realized, man, we kind of really don't need this person around. We've had other people pick up the slack and we haven't missed a beat. So
Yeah.
what were they really doing before?
Well, and the people that are
Obviously
picking up that,
nothing.
and the people that are picking up that slack should be compensated for that.
Correct. Now, in some places, most places aren't doing that. They're going, cool. They just figured out a way to do their job while doing their own job. And if we can get away with them doing that and not asking for additional pay, thumbs up to us. And then, but of course, a lot of people say, hey, can you throw a few extra dollars my way? And then the company goes, well, because of COVID and everything else, we can't. One of the funds right now, we're kind of hurting. Be a company person, take one for the team. And a lot of people are like, okay. And then they go and find another job.
Which I'm
Right.
sorry is if you have the same working capacity that you did during before the pandemic and less staff, I'm sorry, you are full of shit.
And honestly,
Yeah.
that's kind of like how it's been gearing up once they started to shift from neutral into first, second, third gear, where it was kind of like the signal where the personnel stayed the same, but then we start ramping up on our operations tempo. Like example was like the airline industry. They had to cut away some of their technicians or their workers, and then they say, okay, we can fly at 25% capacity, or we can fly to these places now. So same aircraft that's been servicing during the pandemic. Now they want them to do more or bring some other planes out of the hangar to accommodate the flights, but they haven't brought back or hired new technicians to help fix the planes. So you got the same amount of people, like now they're just doing double shifts or longer shifts just to get things rolling. And in MVP and I's case, it kept pushing more flights to happen, but it's still the same 3-5 people who are there. So we're out there turning wrenches with the mechanics, or we're out there towing airplanes with the mechanics. But I still got all these different responsibilities we had to do as the overseer of all the events. So like, how do you expect all this to happen when we have finite personnel, we have minimal, like 10% capacity personnel, but you want to operate closer to 80% of how we were pre-pandemic?
yeah,
Yeah, that's exactly it. So, hey, you're expected to go out there and help all these guys do these things because we're shorthanded, but nobody's coming and helping us with our things, right? So we still have all these reports and stuff we got to kick out every day, and multiple sites to oversee. But we're also getting called, hey, we need your help to do this, and we need your help to move that, and we need this, we need that. So, we worked. There was a lot of days we worked 15-hour days, to get it done. But there was a lot of days where I punched out at hour 11 and was there till 15 too, because the ass chewing for that was a lot less than not getting the actual work done
Right.
for the next day. And so there's a lot of free hours given, right? And a lot of people are like, you're stupid. I wouldn't have done that. And I'm like, yeah, but sort of pandemic land, need a job too, when a lot of people don't have a job.
Right.
it's true.
So I think in another side of it, the darker side, I think a lot of companies took advantage of those situations as well.
I do think a lot of companies did, based on stories I've heard from you guys, but also the stories that I've heard from others, and that's a real shame. I think one good thing, one good thing to come out of the pandemic is I think people were kind of forced to value their time off. I know me personally, I have said no to certain gigs because I'm like, well, I'm booked before and after this show. Maybe I'll just say no to one show. Like, I think I could use a day off, after this 3-week run, where before I would just work through it,
Yeah, just powerhouse it. I'll sleep when I'm dead type mentality.
yeah. And, kind of done doing that, man.
No, I agree with you on that, because there was a time this past winter when I was kind of in limbo, started a new job, but waiting on clearances and stuff to come through and whatever else. And so at that time, they had me just working from home, doing training on a computer at home because there wasn't much else I could do, which is fine. But I learned that I was like, this is really nice. Like, I kind of enjoy being here. And so I get where some people are like, I don't really want to come back to work. Like, I've been doing my job from home. I'd like to continue doing my job. I'm saving money on babysitting. I'm saving money on gas. Wasn't spending money on fuel because fuel here in California is very expensive. All these little things here and there, and I was just like, it was nice that I didn't have to get up at the crack of dawn every day to get dressed, get in the car, and drive an hour to work. It was I could sleep. I could get sleep in a little bit more, get up, log right in, and I'm good to go. And so, like you said, you really learn to value your time away from work. Another good thing that sort of came out of this for a lot of people was they realized that they didn't actually like the job that they had been doing for 10 years or more.
Yes.
It was like a reconciliation where they just woke up one day and went, I hate my job. I hate everything about it.
Yep.
Like why have I been doing it? The pay is, okay, the pay is okay. Maybe the benefits are semi good, but my happiness is shot.
Yeah. I can say that I had one of those revelations during the pandemic myself. And I will leave it at that. And I'm happy to be working for as many companies as I'm working for.
Right.
Yeah.
And I liked how you brought that up too, MVP, about like you get so used to working a certain way, and then and then it takes a significant event to be like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Right. And I think it forced a lot of people to really like you all were saying, like reconcile and really take a look, because sometimes they had this notion in their head that, oh, this is the peak. This is all I'm gonna find, or this is the best I'm gonna get.
This is the pinnacle of my career type thing.
Right. And in some of the areas we were at, that really was the mindset for a lot of people. Like, there's nothing gonna be better than this. My benefits are decent. My pay is decent. And then
what am I really complaining about? But then, so then that gets you through a day or two, but then you just start looking out the window and you're like, I don't really care about this. I don't care if this succeeds or not. Yeah, it's not a mentality you want to have.
It's not even questioning if the grass is greener on the other side. It's a question of, do they even water their grass? Do they at least water their grass?
Does anybody have working sprinklers? You know what I mean?
Do they have
what you're looking for?
Do they have a spigot on the side of their house? Like,
yeah, with a slow leak, like
anything.
But I mean, yeah. So you start looking at it from that aspect, and you say, well, maybe it's time to make a change. But again, it's pandemic time. You're like, I don't know if it's the right time to make a change, just because of the nature of the world right now. But then again, back to the companies taking advantage. You start bringing up things to your boss. You say, hey, can we make improvements here and this and that, and we would really like to do this, and how about some pay increase, and we're taking on all these extra responsibilities. And the response you get is, well, you should just be thankful you have a job.
Yes.
And so for a while you go, yeah, I'm being ungrateful. I should just be thankful I have a job. But then after you hear that so many times, you go, no, you should be thankful you have employees. And in fact, now you're going to have one less because I'm voting with my feet,
For sure. No. And I think that this has empowered some to be able to be like, no, I'm actually a valuable asset. So maybe I should, use that and say, cool, if you don't want me, somebody else is gonna,
Right. And that's a good point for our listeners out there. Know your worth.
100%.
Know your worth.
Yep. So, and then now we're in this stage right now with the way the industries are rolling, is we're starting to turn things back on. And I don't know how it was like for other industries, but when they started saying, okay, we're going to bring back all the work from home individuals back into the fold. And that was a point of friction for a lot of us, because we got used to being so
operating without them.
Right. Or having this much space in the work areas. So then when they started to pour them back in, like, we're having to refigure everything out. We had to turn back on nerves that weren't firing so that much time ago. And then the individuals coming back, from work. They had to relearn how to do their job at the workplace. So
Yeah, trying to reintegrate themselves into having to put on pants every day, you know?
For real.
I mean, I'm sure. I'm sure it was kind of it was kind of a like a atrophy moment for you too, Shoreline, because it's been a while since you've touched the gear and done the shows. So when you actually like got into the mix, like, okay, like you gotta like, not saying you missed a beat, but I'm like, you have to like kind of rehearse how to do things again in your head.
Yeah, totally. Here's the trip. So I did struggle at like the first few days of like going from not having any work to all of a sudden I'm working 3 or 4 16 plus hour days in a row. And then it's like, fuck, how did I used to do this all the time? Like this was every day of every week, you know, for the last 5 years. Like, how did I do this before? And then it's just kind of like getting back into the swing of things, touching certain gear. I mean, luckily the console that I like, the soundboard that I use most often, I have a smaller version of the same console at home. So that part I was fine with. But then like I go out to these, the concert series I'm doing out in Eastern Washington, it's, they have these huge boards that I have never been on in my life. And I think it was the first show. It's like, oh, by the way, they don't have a front of house guy. So here you go. You're mixing the show. Oh,
okay. What does these buttons do?
Oh my God. And like, not only was it, you know, it's been a while, but it's also the biggest PA I've ever been on. It's the biggest console. I mean, the most advanced console that I've ever been on. And I haven't done it for a year and a half. So like, it was kind of one of those, well, throw it to the, you know, get thrown into the fire and either do well or you don't. And it was fine. So
right. Like freaking just like rev the engine and dump the clutch.
yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. It wasn't like the best show ever, but like it was a comedian. It was fine. You know? So yeah, it's strange, man. It's kind of like riding a bike, but the bike moves at 1,000 miles an hour, you know?
Yeah, it's
so
riding a
like,
bicycle that's got a turbocharger underneath of it.
Exactly. So it's like, well, you better get back on it real quick.
Right.
So, yeah, it's been a good run, so far. So far I'm booked through September, which is great. We'll see if that lasts, knock on wood.
Yeah, we hope it does last. Like we had mentioned here a couple of times in the episode, this whole new variant and things seem to be relapsing a little bit. Who knows what's going to happen next, right?
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully we've all come out a little smarter. And I say we, the government,
the collective we,
the collective we have come out a little smarter. At least we can keep everybody working this go around.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if we've learned anything from the previous go, you know, like we didn't just like take the punches and just kind of sat there in the ropes, you know?
Yeah. I just hope everybody's not out there licking each other and we can try to avoid a shutdown. That is my hope. Don't go out there and lick each other in public, please.
Like it wasn't straight into each other's assholes.
Yeah.
It wasn't fun the first time. Let's not go for round 2. Then they really figure out how to hit us.
Please.
For all the other industries out there, I'm sure you guys are getting an influx of new people too, right? That either have yet to have not touched that industry in a long time or they've never done it. So there's going to be a huge learning curve on that point as well, which is going to be it's going to be quite a bit of work before they get fully integrated to the mix. So just keep up with the patience and just realize like it's not going to operate how you guys did during the pandemic.
Yeah. And I encourage everybody who has remained working during this time to be patient with those that haven't. And you don't know what their situation was like. You don't know if that was a choice of their own or not. And treat it as if it wasn't. Give them the benefit of the doubt, and if they're there to learn and they're there to work, then teach them and try to welcome them in, and because all that's going to do is make your life easier.
Most
Yeah.
definitely. Most definitely. Final thoughts, anybody?
No, none really. Hope everybody's staying safe and staying healthy and is staying working, or has positive prospects on work.
Hope everybody's out there. Maybe catch a show if you can. If you do, tip your bartenders well. If you see a street musician, pay that $1. Do whatever. I mean, it's been a tough year for everybody, but it's been especially hard in the entertainment industry, having nothing. So be kind.
In the words of one of our favorite podcasters, is just be a decent freaking human.
Yep. Exactly.
Be a decent human being.
Yep.
On that note, thanks everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
We'd like to take this time to thank our patrons for supporting our show and allowing us to continue to make episodes, maintain our gear, and create merch for all of our listeners, with special thanks to Erica Lamont, Chris Hawkins, Ryan Frushauer, Dan Schubert, Jenny Dignan, and the ladies of the Dick Talk and Mimosas podcast. Thank you all so much for your support and patronage. Visit our shop at cancelformaintenance.com and grab some swag to show off both your support for us and your prowess as an aircraft technician. If you have ideas for the show or you'd like to be a guest on the show, visit our contact us section and send us a line. We will do what we can to get your ideas or yourself on the show. You can also follow us on social media, such as on Facebook at Cancel for Maintenance, Instagram at Canx, that's CANX for Maintenance Podcast, or on Twitter at CXMX Podcast. Check out some of our affiliates like Rockwell Time, where they make both rugged and classy watches to fit your lifestyle. Use the code CX4MX and save 10% off your purchase. Support us on Patreon. Our patrons get exclusive perks such as access to our Discord, discounts and early access to merch, special patron-only episodes, and so much more. Thank you again so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.